Have you ever had one of those incredibly frustrating moments where you knew exactly what the logical choice was? The rational answer was just staring you right in the face, and then you went and did something else entirely. Maybe it was staying in a situation you deeply knew wasn't right, or avoiding a tough conversation you definitely needed to have. The logic was all there, but something else, something visceral, something powerful, just shoved it completely aside. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to break down exactly what is happening inside your head when that happens. Right off the bat, we need to completely reframe this incredibly familiar feeling. Because what you experienced in that moment, it wasn't weakness, it wasn't a lack of willpower, and it absolutely was not a character flaw. What you actually experienced was a war. A literal war between two of the oldest systems in your brain. And the crazy part? The outcome of that battle was determined millions of years before you were even born. To understand why your brain does this to you, we have to look at the two radically different operating systems running inside your head right now. Section 1, System 1 versus System 2. This entire framework comes from the late Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman. His decades of research completely revolutionized how we understand human decision-making, basically by revealing that you have two distinct biological networks competing for control. First up, there is System 1. This system is fast, it's automatic, and it is highly emotional. It operates totally below your conscious radar, constantly taking in the world and pattern matching in a split second. It's a deeply ancient survival system. On the flip side, we have System 2. This is your slow, deliberate, logical, modern brain. It's the one you fire up when you're carefully weighing options, doing complex math, or trying to override a really strong impulse. But here is the absolute game changer. These systems are not equals. System 1 runs continuously and effortlessly. System 2 only engages when it absolutely has to, and using it is incredibly costly. Think of your logical System 2 like a fragile battery that drains a little bit more every single time you have to focus hard or exert self-control.
Section 2. Why emotion always wins.
So we know these two systems share the same brain, but what actually happens, neurologically speaking, when logic and emotion collide? Well, Joseph LeDoux, a researcher over at NYU, mapped the exact neural architecture of this conflict, and he proved that this is definitively not a fair fight. It really comes down to one staggering metric: 12 milliseconds. LeDoux discovered that sensory information travels to your amygdala, which is your brain's primary emotional processing center, via a direct neurological shortcut. This low road completely bypasses your conscious thought and delivers a fully formed emotional response in an astonishing 12 milliseconds. To put into perspective just how incredibly fast that is, a single blink of your eye takes about 300 milliseconds. Now, contrast that rapid speed with 200 to 500 milliseconds. That is how long it takes for the exact same sensory information to finally reach your prefrontal cortex, which is the modern seat of your logical reasoning. Think about what that means for you in the real world. By the time your logical System 2 has even finished processing what's happening around you, your emotional System 1 has already responded. It shifted your physiology, it spiked your adrenaline, and it has already begun aggressively shaping your behavior. Emotion simply has a 10 to 40 times head start. And this brilliant, ancient biological design becomes even more extreme when you're under pressure. Researcher Daniel Goleman famously defined this phenomenon as the amygdala hijack. When you're under acute stress, your brain actually steals cognitive resources away from your slow, logical prefrontal cortex and funnels them directly into your fast, emotional amygdala. You know exactly how this physically feels, right? The sudden tunnel vision, the racing heart, the total inability to string a coherent, rational sentence together during a heated argument. Your brain actively disables your logic because in a survival emergency, it defaults entirely to the ancient emotional system it trusts the absolute most. Section 3, the myth of pure logic. It's incredibly easy to hear all of this and think, well, if emotion constantly overrides and shuts down our logic, wouldn't we just be much better off without emotion entirely? To answer that, we have to look to Antonio Damasio's landmark research on the somatic marker hypothesis at the University of Southern California. Damasio studied patients who had sustained very specific brain damage to the emotional centers of their prefrontal cortex. Now, for these patients, their logic was perfectly intact. Their IQs were completely unchanged. But without emotions to attach value to their options, their lives completely fell apart. Damasio discovered that our emotions actually use accumulated past experiences to literally mark choices as good or bad, dangerous or desirable. Without those emotional markers, Damasio's patients became catastrophically paralyzed by indecision. Imagine trying to just decide where to eat lunch. Without emotion, you might spend 4 hours analyzing the menu, perfectly comparing the prices, calculating the exact nutritional variables, weighing the seating arrangements, but you'd feel absolutely zero intuitive pull toward any specific choice.
Pure logic cannot decide. It can compare, it can contrast, it can analyze indefinitely, but it cannot conclude. So the crucial takeaway we have to accept here is that emotion is not the enemy of good decision-making, it is actually a mandatory biological prerequisite for it. But wait, if emotion is so utterly necessary to function, why does it continually lead us into so many traps? Jonathan Haidt at NYU Stern mapped out exactly how this plays out in our everyday judgments. Step 1. You feel an instant emotional verdict in under a single second. Step 2. You then actively construct a logical justification for that sudden verdict. Haidt called this moral dumbfounding. We do not actually reason our way to our conclusions. We feel our way there instantly. And then we just do the mental math to make ourselves sound smart.
I really want you to let this next thought sink in. You didn't reason to your conclusion. You felt it, then you defended it. Whether it's the political candidate you aggressively defend, the person you decide you like within 3 seconds of meeting them at a party, or a workplace argument you are absolutely certain you're winning, in almost all decisions, your logical brain is basically just acting as a lawyer. It was hired by your emotional brain to aggressively defend the verdict that System 1 already handed down the second you walked into the room. Section 4, why your logic gets tired.
We mentioned earlier that System 2, your logical brain, is a lot like a fragile battery. Roy Baumeister at the University of Queensland researched a concept called ego depletion, which basically proves that effortful, logical thinking draws on a highly limited physical resource. To see ego depletion in action, we can look at a very famous study of Israeli judges. Early in the morning, when their mental batteries were totally full, these judges granted parole about 65% of the time. They were doing the hard, logical work of evaluating each case individually. But as the session wore on, and their System 2 resources deeply depleted, the favorable decisions dropped to nearly zero. Why? Because when the logical brain is exhausted, no is the safe, low-energy, emotional default. It requires zero mental effort to just deny a request. Then, amazingly, right after a simple food break, their favorable decisions instantly shot right back up to 65%.
The reality of your day is actually incredibly simple. System 2 depletes, and System 1 dominates. Every deliberate choice you make, every email you carefully draft, every impulse you bite back during the day physically drains your logical fuel. This is exactly why you might stick to your strict diet flawlessly at 10 a.m., but find yourself mindlessly eating junk food at 10 p.m. Your logical override is completely running on empty, leaving the emotional brain entirely in charge of the night shift.
Section 5. The perfect biological design.
Okay, so if System 1 is lightning fast and System 2 is slow and easily exhausted, how are we supposed to optimally function? Well, we actually have a built-in conflict monitor in our brains called the anterior cingulate cortex. When System 1 and System 2 clash, this monitor detects the tension and basically sounds an alarm, signaling that you need to wake up and pay deliberate attention. And to truly appreciate this amazing design, we look at the constructed emotion theory by neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett at Northeastern University. She proved that your emotions are not just primitive, hardwired animal reactions. They are highly complex, constructed predictions. Your brain predicts what emotion will be most useful to you right now based on millions of past experiences and your current physical state. Basically, emotions are actually highly compressed, incredibly efficient wisdom meant to guide you quickly. Therefore, the ultimate goal of your mind is integration, not domination. A well-functioning brain does not ruthlessly suppress emotion, because as Damasio showed us, completely ignoring emotion leads to disastrous, paralyzing indecision. And it certainly doesn't ignore logic either. The optimal state of being human is integrating the incredibly rapid, compressed pattern recognition of your emotional System 1 with the deliberate, careful auditing checks of your logical System 2. Which brings us full circle to this profound realization. The war in your brain is not a flaw. It is the feature. That agonizing internal tension you feel when you logically know better, but intensely want to do it anyway, that is not a bug that evolution somehow forgot to fix. It is, in fact, the most sophisticated decision-making architecture ever evolved on this planet, working exactly as intended to keep you alive, aware, and adaptable.
And so I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to consider the very next time you feel that silent war waging inside your head. In the moments that matter most to your life, how will you know if your emotion is speaking from compressed, incredibly efficient wisdom, or if it is just speaking from an ancient fear? Thank you so much for exploring this with me in today's Explainer. Use this knowledge to listen to your brain just a little differently next time you have a crucial choice to make.